A former state trooper now accused of murdering his ex-girlfriend's new lover after allegedly stalking her and leaving a package on her doorstep. The suspect apparently had a history of stalking his exes, even leaving a different woman a box of relationship books and a typed-up note. In this case, he's accused of searching out his ex's new man, knocking on his front door and shooting the new boyfriend at point-blank range. Let's back this up just a bit, though, to explain what led up to the murder. The defendant in today's case is 27-year-old William Hunter Snyder, who mostly went by the name Hunter. He lived in Milton, Pennsylvania, which is pretty much in the middle of the state, like an hour north of Harrisburg. Before all this, he was a Pennsylvania state trooper for about 18 months, but was let go in June of 2023. According to the Standard Speaker, Hunter was apparently harassing one of his ex-girlfriends, calling her, texting her, sending her messages via Snapchat, or even creating fake social media accounts. After their breakup, he reached out more than 100 times. Now, the Standard Speaker reports that in June of 2023, he was charged with stalking and harassment. He served 360 days of probation and paid an $1,100 fine. More than a year later, though, in October of 2024, he started dating Courtney Lee Burgard. But this relationship only lasted for about a month. Courtney allegedly broke it off, but Hunter apparently wouldn't stop contacting her. The Citizen's Voice obtained Hunter's eventual affidavit, and it included some of the messages. Here's an example of one of the texts he sent to Courtney, quote, "Nothing is ever going to stop me from pursuing you. How am I supposed to stay wonderful when every day without you drags me deeper into darkness?" In another text, he wrote, quote, "I know you miss me, and I know you still love me. You miss me. Your connection is stronger than anything I've ever felt, and I know you feel the same way. Selfishly and unselfishly, I am the best thing for you, and I would do everything to prove that. We never had a single issue. You are my one person. I am crazy, I know, but you are my soulmate. We honestly belong together." To this message, Courtney replied, quote, "Hunter, I can't." He wrote back, "Why can't you? You can do anything. You know it in your heart, Courtney. You know I'm your person. I'm your human. We are meant for so much more. I know it and you know it. You said you've been questioning why you ran away, ... because you know it was a mistake." Courtney wrote back, "Hunter, you need to stop this. I told you we can only be friends." When he asked why, she replied, "Because I said so." This was ongoing for months, and in the meantime, Courtney started dating 44-year-old John Rabbits Jr., who mostly went by the name Johnny. Johnny knew about all of this and actually installed security cameras at both his and Courtney's houses just this month. On January 17th, Hunter was caught on one of these security cameras going to Courtney's house. He left a package behind. The Standard Speaker reports that there was a coffee press inside. A few days later, on January 21st, Johnny got a knock on his front door. Investigators say it was Hunter at the door, armed with a .40 caliber gun. At 5:34 p.m., Johnny made a 911 call saying, quote, "A male knocked on my door, shot me, and ran away." There are conflicting reports about whether Johnny knew exactly who Hunter was, but he apparently did tell 911 dispatch that the shooter was there to, quote, "shoot him over a girl." First responders rushed to Johnny's home and found him bleeding out from that gunshot wound. They then took him to the hospital, but he was pronounced dead when he arrived. Here's where we have to go back to the map, though. The shooting happened at Johnny's house in Sugarloaf Township, which is about 40 minutes east of Milton. That's where Hunter lived. After the shooting, Hunter apparently went to his coworker's house in Shamokin, which is about an hour south of Sugarloaf Township. When authorities later tracked Hunter's social media data, they found he was active at 4:06 p.m., but not again until 6:16 p.m. the day of the shooting. Investigators say that timetable makes sense for Hunter to drive from his home to Johnny's and then to his coworkers. This same coworker later spoke to investigators, saying Hunter showed up to his home around 6:30 that night and seemed nervous. The coworker also noted that when Hunter came inside, he took off his shoes because they're wet. Investigators say a trail of shoe prints was also found in the snow outside of Johnny's house, which could explain why Hunter's shoes were wet. But there's more than just this circumstantial evidence. Investigators used cell phone data and security cameras to trace the movement of Hunter's vehicle the day of the shooting. They confirmed it was his 2018 Hyundai Tucson because it was a distinctive decal on the back window. This vehicle was seen in the area of Johnny's home and of Hunter's. Hunter actually lived with his father, who happened to own several .40 caliber handguns. And at the scene of Johnny's murder, investigators found a .40 caliber shell casing. On January 22nd, Hunter was arrested and arraigned the next day on charges of criminal homicide. Right now, he's being held without bond. All right, let's dig a bit deeper into this case. And for that, I'm going to bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Matt Mangino, actually out of Pennsylvania, where this case takes place. And Matt, right from the top, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think about this case? The fact that we almost have a love triangle murder gone wrong. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a frightening case on a couple of different levels, obviously. And number one, this guy was a former Pennsylvania state trooper. So he's a guy who gone through evaluations and assessments and completed the state police academy, which is rigorous in Pennsylvania. And then he has this position of authority, yet he's a serial stalker. And which ultimately leads, at least allegedly, to murder.
This story unto itself is devastating, the fact that someone lost their life. But as you pointed out, the fact that a former Pennsylvania state trooper is apparently the suspect in this case is really what it makes it stand out. And that's what I was thinking too as I was going into this. This is a person who obviously has to know the law, has probably potentially been called to other gunshot scenes when he was on the job, so he's likely familiar. Is this something prosecutors are going to focus on, that he has a background with that?
Well, yeah, I think that they will, and I think it's appropriate as well. I mean, this was a guy who was in a position of trust. This was someone that we relied on in our communities across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to protect us and to investigate crime. What is even more troubling, as I said a moment ago, and again, obviously these are allegations against William Snyder, but he has firearm training. He's investigated crime. He knows how damaging to victims this idea of stalking and heated contacts by persons, and how that affects them and how that affects other people. Yet he allegedly involved himself in that conduct himself, not once, but repeatedly. And that's frightening.
It's really troubling to think about, especially with his background in law enforcement. I liked what you pointed out, that when someone's in an emergency in Pennsylvania, he could be the one who responds to it, and now he is a murder suspect. You talked a lot about stalking, though, and I wanted to bring that up too, because we have that a bit in this case, and then apparently a prior case with a different ex-girlfriend, not related, that he was actually convicted of stalking and harassment back in 2023. So in this case, could that one be included? I know we're talking back and forth a lot of different things, but prior bad acts, could we talk about his past stalking?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it shows that there is sort of a modus operandi, there's a consistent pattern that this individual involves himself in terms of committing these crimes, then that certainly could be relevant in this case, because this shows a history. I mean, typically in criminal cases, an unrelated criminal offense may not be necessarily something that could come up during trial unless it's a crime of crimen falsi, a crime of falsehood that shows that this person, has the potential to lie and to be deceitful. But in this situation, we're looking at crimes, and according to the news reports that I've read, are very similar. Obviously, he didn't. There was no murder in the first case that involved stalking, but other than that, they're very similar in the repeated contacts, the leaving of gifts and packages at the home of the victim. This all shows a sort of pattern of conduct, so it certainly could be relevant during a trial in this case.
You're right. The stalking and the harassment kind of mirrors each other. There's a lot going on. But the first case, we don't know the name of that girlfriend. She's been unnamed and not in the public. But in this case, the girl kind of in the middle of it is this woman named Courtney. And I know that she gave investigators screenshots, messages, photos that he had sent her. Is this something that investigators are really going to go through, take a look at what he was texting her and messaging her leading up to this murder?
Certainly, this is going to be, extremely valuable in setting sort of the groundwork for why ultimately this murder may have occurred. The thing, Sarah, that's further troubling about this, if you read it, the second relationship only lasted a month. So in 1 month, he got to the point where, he's saying, you're my soulmate. I can't live without you. You're everything to me. And is sending repeated texts and dropping packages off at her home, gifts to her. This was a 1 month relationship. I mean, typically that might be a couple of dinners in a movie. And this guy is psychotically stalking her over that 30-day relationship.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking about the 30-day situation too, the fact that they were together for 1 month. And that's still really early on in the relationship. I mean, how in depth can you get in 4 weeks? She felt it wasn't right, and he kept accosting her with these messages and showing up at her home, as you said. If this does go to jury trial down the line, do you think Courtney, would be a good witness in the case?
Well, yeah, I mean, she's going to be able to show the jury what the motive is in this case. The motive in this case allegedly is that he killed her new boyfriend. And that was the reason why the victim was murdered, because he was now in a relationship with this woman that he was stalking. You don't need a motive in a criminal prosecution. You don't need a motive for murder. But if you have one, it certainly answers the question to a jury: why would this guy show up at somebody's house, knock on the door, and shoot them? Well, here's why. And that's why her testimony will be so important in this case.
I do feel like the motive is very straightforward in this case and could be a win for prosecutors, as you pointed out. I'm wondering if the other evidence could also be a win for them. The fact that he had a .40 caliber gun at his home with his father, and there was a matching shell casing, that we'd have him and his movements on his cell phone or his car with security camera video, a lot of things piling up against him. Do you think they have a strong case evidentiarily?
I think they have an extremely strong case. And, as we said early on, I mean, this is alleged conduct. But when you put these pieces together, the cell phone data that he was in the area of the victim's home when this happened, the fact that, hey, he's trained with firearms, he has a firearm, all these things are consistent. In fact, as you read the news reports, the victim of the shooting basically says, hey, this could be this guy who was formerly with my girlfriend. So he makes kind of a deathbed statement. Hey, this is the guy who might be responsible for it. So when you start connecting all those dots, which prosecutors do, they're very careful about, weaving this whole picture, and juries expect to have all this information. And here you're going to have forensics. You're going to have a history of stalking. You're going to have possible ballistics evidence. So yes, it's an extremely strong case, I would think, from the prosecution standpoint.
Just thinking about the testimony from the girlfriend, Courtney, in this case, and then also from the victim himself, as you pointed out in this 911 call, laying out that he believes the person who shot him was doing so over a girl. I mean, that's really hard to combat. Another thing I wanted to highlight too is the distance in all of this. I mean, Pennsylvania, you know better than I do, very big. And I was looking at a map between all of this, and he had to drive quite a while from his home to get to the victim's home. And then after that, a while again to go to his coworker's house, which he apparently did after. That's a long time to me that he is in his car for about an hour driving toward this with intent to commit murder. I mean, does it show just that intent? He could have turned around, he could have stopped himself, but he went through with it anyway.
Oh yeah. I mean, here we're talking about, planned, premeditated murder. Okay. So we have a motive for why you would do it. And, this is not something that, is, heat of the moment. a passionate killing. Oh, you find out that your old girlfriend, who was your girlfriend for a month, but you find out your old girlfriend has a new boyfriend, and you see them together, and you just lose it, and you shoot the guy. That's not what happened. This is not a heat of passion. This is not manslaughter. This appears to be planned, premeditated, first-degree murder, and I think that's what prosecutors are going to pursue in this case.
And I know we talked about the text messages, the cell phone data, like his phone paying off certain satellites and all of that. So we talked about that, and they're probably going to look into that. But I'm wondering if also investigators would take a look at his phone or past search history. Sometimes we see that a suspect has searched the victim, or they've searched a weapon or a type of murder that is similar. Is that something that investigators would also focus on?
Well, yeah, I think investigators are going to look at every possibility here. And as we know from having talked many times in the cases that we see, on Law and Crime, are cases in which electronic evidence is key. You can't hide from that any longer, whether it's the doorbell video of you dropping something off at the house, or it's the pings on your cell phone to show where you are. That evidence comes up in nearly every case. And the other thing that investigators have to be careful of, and then I think that they are conscious of this, is some sort of tunnel vision. Well, okay, he's sending all these texts, and so he has to be responsible, and you just eliminate everybody else. I think you have to do a lot of legwork to make sure that this is the right guy, and you just didn't focus on him because of these other situations right at the outset. The victim who was killed, was there anybody else who had a vendetta against him or her, or was there a threat against him by other people? So you want to make sure that you cover all those bases. But it's hard once you start putting these pieces together to look in any other direction but William Snyder.
I'm glad you pointed that out, that sometimes investigators can get tunnel vision, as you said. And it's important to note that I'm sure, looking through all other leads, and prosecutors wouldn't have brought the charges if they didn't think they had a strong case. But we've talked a lot about the prosecution, so I want us to talk about the defense now. Right now, these are just allegations. He is innocent until proven guilty. What sort of defense do you think he could bring?
Well, if I were defending him and looking at the evidence, and again, if he admits that he is the guy who shot him, I'm going to look at, even though I kind of tried to debunk it earlier, I'm still looking at heat of passion. These texts and other things, show that he was head over heels for this woman. It's obviously troubling to the extent, and he's just madly in love with her, and finds out she has a boyfriend, and he loses it and gets in the car and drives over there and kills him. Obviously, he's responsible for the death, but it's not first-degree murder. This is a manslaughter. This is a heat of passion. He's so in love and he loses it, and that would be one defense that I could see possibly raised. The other is, hey, it wasn't me, or it wasn't him. Yeah, you got all this other stuff, but hey, show me where you put him on this doorstep with a gun, shooting the victim at that specific time. It could have been anybody. Will those defenses fly? No, but I think that defense attorneys have to explore every option zealously and see where it leads them.
I wonder if, too, they would focus on a mental health screener or speak with a professional in that way, go through some sort of psychiatric exam. Do you think the defense would be into that?
I think they have to. I think they have an obligation to have a mental health assessment done. So if we take everything before the shooting as true, this guy has some serious mental health issues. That's not necessarily an excuse for his conduct, but it might be a mitigator. It might be something that reduces this charge, from first-degree murder to a lesser offense, because he has these mental health issues. Frankly, it would be, malpractice not to have psychological evaluations done and see what the results of those are, because at least from a layman's terms, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or have any specific training in that area, but we have a history here of bizarre conduct, frankly, predatory conduct that he's displayed at least with two other people. So that's something that has to be explored.
A lot happening in this case, probably on both the defense and prosecution side, so we'll see where it's headed. Matt Mangino, thank you so much for coming on and breaking it down for us.
Thanks, Sarah. It's always great to talk with you.
William Hunter Snyder is due back in court on March 7th for his preliminary hearing. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.